Wonderful. Am I audible?
Yes, very much.
Excellent. And have the virtual audience audio been turned off? Hopefully. Yes. Yeah. Okay, great. Well, greetings everyone. Wonderful to see you all and great to be here in lovely Oxford after many two and a half years of pandemic. Have you noticed that I'm the only person in the conference who's wearing a mask? Apparently, the pandemic is over and I've been living under a rock. Actually, I come from Canada and we have very strict mandates there. I have to wear my mask to my classroom. I have to wear a mask to all the businesses. And when I return to Canada, I might be randomly picked for doing a test and I might be quarantined if I test positive. I don't know, either the whole world has just ignored the pandemic or Canada is really paranoid. I do not know.
How's that paranoid?
Paranoid. Anyway, wonderful to be here and I would like to thank Dr. Datta and all the organizers of CBER for giving me this opportunity. Fantastic to be here. So the topic of my talk is about cybersecurity. I'm going to talk to you from a technology perspective on the current and the future state of cybersecurity. Cyber attacks are continuing to defy technology. And we'll look at some of the current cyber threats that we might face in this decade and what we should do to mitigate those cyber threats. Okay. Before I begin, I would like to pay my tribute and dedicate this to a very dear friend of mine, Mark T. Jones, who many of you know passed away last year. He had a magnanimous presence in these conferences and we miss him very, very much. Right, so here's the quick plan for today's talk. I'm going to quickly talk about cybersecurity past and present. I'm going to showcase the 5 top cybersecurities of concern that I feel are important in this decade, the 2020s, and then some best practices that businesses should follow. And finally, a quick look into the future. And Jerry is my timekeeper. He'll warn me when my time is up. Okay, so shall I begin with the good news or the bad news about cybersecurity?
Good news.
The good news. Here's the good news. There's no problem. We can all be 100% cyber attack proof. Do you agree? Well, here's the not so good news. The only way we can do it, and I paraphrase it from security expert Gene Spafford, he said, the only way you can be truly 100% secure is if your computer system is powered off, cast in a block of concrete, and sealed in a lead-lined room protected by armed guards. Let's face it, we are living in a world wherein we see cyber attacks every day. Can anyone guess the number of cyber malicious online activities, everything included, successful, unsuccessful, that happens each year? Trillions. Oh, any other guesses?
800 million.
Very good. There you go. Somebody gave me the exact answer. It's actually an estimate.
To be fair, you said it in another session.
Very true. So this is an estimate, and you can imagine that it's all more than 2 million a day, 200,000 every year, or rather every hour, and almost 24 attacks every second. By the time this talk is over, there'll be at least 100,000 malicious activities that have taken place online. Okay, so how is the threat landscape changing? I gave a TED talk, a TEDx talk at my university 5 years ago. This was in March 2017, and that's yours truly, talking about the top 5 emerging cybersecurity challenges. And 5 years ago, I identified these as the top 5. Number 5, mobile technologies. Number 4, ransomware. Number 3, Internet of Things. Number 2, big data. And number 1, the human factor. So the question is, 5 years from then, how has it changed? What are we looking at here? You'll be very interested to know that the threat landscape in one area there are continuing cyber threats. Some things that we saw from 5 years ago. There are emerging cyber threats posed by new technologies. But what is interesting is some of the old traditional cyber threats, age-old traditional cyber threats are resurfacing. That's what we're going to see in this decade. So let me put out the top 5, which I think, and 5 years from now, you can call me and we can check whether my predictions were right. Top 5 cyber security threats of concern for the 2020s. At number 5, I put what I call denial of service attacks. These are traditional age-old ones, which have been in existence for the past 20, 30 years. They are resurfacing now. So what's a denial of service attack? Very simply this. It's a traditional cyber attack in which attackers disable servers so that legitimate clients cannot access them. So let us say you want to go on Amazon website and you see it's down. You go to the website of Bank of London and you want to do a payment transaction. You can never get through it for hours on end. Probably that server is under a denial of service attack. So it could be any one of the servers, Bank of London, Amazon, PayPal, Expedia, healthcare, your company's web server. So what exactly happens in a denial of service attack? The attackers take multiple identities and start sending floods of information to your server. So when you try to log on, that's the message that you get. Sorry, your connection is timed out. How many times it has happened to many of us, right? So how do attackers do this? Actually, there's a very, very interesting way. Attackers pick public servers, public-facing servers like your DNS servers, time servers, and use that as reflection mechanisms. Very simply, I'm going to give you a very quick technology example here. This is your web server. Let us say its IP address is X. There's the attacker. The attacker sends a message to all the public servers asking, hello, my IP address is X. Can you give me this information? So who are those web servers going to send the information to? To the victim. The hapless victim is bombarded with multiple replies. It doesn't know where it's coming from. And very soon, your server is under denial of service attack. And believe it or not, many, many recent attacks have taken place using this technique. Mirai botnet in 2016. Google was brought down. Amazon Web Services was brought down in 2020. And then GitHub was brought down in 2018. And you will see a number of these types of attacks on military organizations, government websites that are happening as we speak every year. In fact, Cisco estimated that the number of DOS attacks is almost going to hit 15 million every year. Scary. Did you know that there are professional denial of service attack services available freely on the web? You can actually purchase the service for as little as $19 if you want to target somebody. And here's a website. This is actually from the website, and I put a slash sign on it, do not engage. And it gives you the how to get these DOS services and DOS anyone that you do not like. Maybe your competitor company, who knows? And what is interesting is they also have customer service support. They have a call center. If your attack doesn't work, you can call them. Oh Lord, that's true. Okay, at number 4, I put emerging wireless technologies. We all know our amazing smartphones. So I'm going to quickly touch upon 3 things: smartphones, Internet of Things, and your cars. Those will be the 3 main targets. Growth of smartphones have been unbelievable, isn't it? Did you know that there are 1.6 billion smartphones sold every day? If you ever go to central London and look outside the Apple store, the day Apple releases a new product, you know that, you know what I mean. And this smartphone is a very powerful engine. And it has everything that you need, very powerful processor. So basically, we are carrying a supercomputer in our pocket these days. Imagine all the apps that you do, that you work on. And imagine all the sensors that are there on your smartphone, from accelerometer to gyroscope to heart rate to light pressure sensors, barometers. Add that to your microphone, your camera, your contact. So the question is, how much does your smartphone know about you? It is said that your smartphone knows more about you than your closest friend or your partner or even your spouse. Think about that. Your smartphone knows where you are, who you are, where you have been, what you bought, what you ate, whether you really went to the gym, and even your personal mood. But the interesting question then becomes, who is it sharing this information with? When you download the third-party apps, do you know what agreement you're signing? If your Fitbit requires access to your text messages, that doesn't sound right, does it? So these are the things that we need to worry about when smartphones become increasingly useful. The next one is the current technology wave that we are seeing, Internet of Things. Imagine every object around you can be given 5 powers. The power to identify itself, the power to locate, the power to communicate, the power to compute, and the power to sense your surroundings. That becomes a smart object. And imagine if all those smart objects could kind of talk to each other. That's your Internet of Things. Basically, the 2000s, we just used to call the Internet of People, people talking to people. The 2010s, people talking to things. But in 2020s, we're going to see things talking to things. They don't need us anymore. That's the reality. That's the new world we are going to live in. So smart objects can talk to each other. And you already know that there are over 21 billion. Even clothes are being manufactured, which are smart. Your refrigerator is smart. Your toaster is smart. Your bathtub is smart, let alone your Google glasses and your pen. And what if these present new attack surfaces? So there have been multiple researchers, and this was a famous article, Alexa, have you been hacked? And cyber threats on smart devices, basically what the hacker could do is, if there's one single weak link, the hacker could take over your Alexa speaker and from then on, control multiple objects in your home. And it's been demonstrated that even accessing a baby monitor can lead to unlocking your garage door. Right. And that leads to cars, our next target. The 2020s are going to see an increase in what we call vehicular ad hoc networks. Cars talking to your cars have an amazing number of computer systems. So 2 years ago, researchers demonstrated this. They were able to remotely, while the Jeep was being driven, they were able to remotely turn on the wipers, change the radio stations, and the scarier part is this. They were able to hit the brakes and drive the Jeep into the ditch, and the driver had no control at all. Right. Number 3, critical infrastructure. We are not living in a siloed society anymore. Our nuclear plants, our power grids, our water supply, everything is being controlled remotely. And these are called SCADA systems, supervisory control and data acquisition systems. So sensors connected to remote terminal units, to master terminal units, and so on. So basically, these become sensitive areas where attackers could take over. And this has been the case just last year alone. Colleagues from the United States would know that there was a big Colonial pipeline shutdown. That was the result of a cyber attack. And a water treatment facility in Florida had sodium chloride injected into the system, and that was also done remotely. Number two, I put ransomware. This is continuing to be a problem. You know what ransomware does, right? Basically, it's a malware that it gets into your system when you download a virus or visit a nefarious website and click on a link. So ransomware, when it gets into your system, starts encrypting all your files. And the only way to get your files back is if you pay a ransom, which usually occurs in the form of Bitcoin and keeps the payee anonymous. So do you know what happens if you don't pay the ransom within the time that they specify? The ransom gets doubled and the timer cuts in half. So they keep you on your toes. So 2021 was a big year for ransomware. Major companies have paid enormous amounts of ransom in these attacks. And the frequency of ransomware apparently is going to just 11 seconds. Every 11 seconds, somebody is being targeted with a ransomware. How many of those are successful? That remains to be seen. And number one, once again, I haven't changed this from what I said 5 years ago. Technology can do whatever it wants, but ultimately it leads us to the one important problem that we have in cybersecurity. It's the human factor. And it all boils down to social engineering. It's the art of conning people to reveal information. And Bruce Neer, another famous security expert, says, amateurs go and hack systems. Professionals, they go right to people. Fantastic. I just need 5 minutes. That's it. Yeah. So some of the largest data breaches have taken place due to social engineering. And you're all aware of this. In January 2020, Microsoft suffered a huge breach. February 2020, MGM Resorts, and April 2020, passwords of emails and passwords of COVID organizations were hacked. Online platform Udemy, and it went on and on and on. Many different attacks, many data breaches. These have continued to mount during the pandemic. Sadly, cyber attackers have taken advantage of the online situation and have tried to attack, cause more number of havoc. Right, in 2 minutes. So those are my 5 predictions. How should businesses respond? I don't think I have an answer. I'm going to stop my talk. No, unfortunately, there's no magic bullet. We need to have a multifaceted approach to cybersecurity. Number one, know your threat surface. Okay? You need to have a good vulnerability assessment made, governance, risk, and compliance checks, and know the security gaps. Unless you know your infrastructure very well and know where the loopholes are, I don't think we can protect our systems. Number 2, use protective measures. After you know the protective, what the loopholes are, use everything you can to surround your network with a fortress, VPNs, firewalls, antivirus software. Number 3, backup. Over provision. Bandwidth is cheap these days. You remember I talked to you about the denial of service attacks? What the attackers are trying to take advantage is the bandwidth. So if you need 10 gigabits of second bandwidth, over provision, purchase 1 terabits per second. That way, you can at least mitigate some of the denial of service attacks. Build a cyber playbook. You need to play out what would happen in the case of any cyber attack. And that would mean attack detection. How do you react to an attack? And how do you reflect upon finishing the attack? Educate and train staff. That's super important. So educate employees in cyber hygiene, train them to spot phishing and spam emails and so on. And finally, enforce strong policies. Okay? Access control, separation of business and personal accounts, and password management. In fact, it all boils down to one simple thing. If you were to ask, what was the most common way in which attackers gained access to your networks? Passwords, passwords, passwords. Unfortunately, we are not there yet. We are not at a situation wherein we can get rid of passwords altogether. So until that happens, we need to be very, very careful. And there have been multiple scenarios being given. You know, passwords have been compared to toothbrushes, you know, to change them up. I love this quote from Chris Pirillo, who says, passwords, the final frontier. Passwords are like underwear. You don't let people see it. You should change it often, and you should never, ever share it with strangers. I'm not asking you to change your password every day like your underwear, but you get the idea. Well, folks, that is me talking to you about.
Hi, Doctor. I think your speech was wonderful. That shows your expertise in the field. I think you talked a lot of scary things. We're all very scared that, you know, as they say, you need to catch a thief, you need to hire a thief. So are people doing anything to really protect the system well? What's the
Very good
solution?
question. Unfortunately, we are playing catch up. That has been the problem with cybersecurity all along. We first design systems to be convenient and then say, oh, there's a security problem now. Let's take care of it. I think that mentality has to change. I'm reminded of this famous quote from Charles Darwin. He said, it is not the species that is the strongest that will survive. It is the species that is the most adaptable. So we need to adapt to technology. We can't resist technology. We need to adapt and beat cyber attacks with technology.
Very nice.
Yes.
One of the measures taken in our universities is the adopting the multi-factors protection authentication.
Mhm.
So I think it may have done some good, but it may have also created problem. How reliable it is from your experience?
You mean the cybersecurity measures?
For the cyber security.
I would say, I always tell my students, security is inversely proportional to cost, or rather, security inversely proportional to convenience, but directly proportional to cost. So convenience is going to definitely come down. However, hopefully it will be manageable. It's like having the brakes in your on your car. We want to drive as fast as we can, but brakes do save lives. We have time for one more question.
Yes, please, madam.
Okay,
Thank you. First of all, it was a great presentation.
thank
And
you.
I think there's a lot of, it's an eye opener. And some new areas are emerging, like you said, human to human and the human hacking bit. So I'm concerned, like for the university systems, like we are having curriculum most often. So how do you see a new curriculum and cybersecurity unfolding with the newness of the way the new problems are coming up? So how do you see, what kind of curriculum? And do you
Fantastic.
think industries could collaborate?
Coming from the Vice Chancellor, I must answer that question. There have been numerous cybersecurity programs that have been created. Unfortunately, what is missing is what you rightly said. Multiple stakeholders have to be involved. We must get industry. We must get the military. We must get the citizens. Everybody working together, and the curriculum must be designed to have the multi-pronged approach. And audience like this would be the prime example of how to take this forward.
Anyone else? No? No? Srini, thank you very much.
Thank you.